Something magical about the first time that Star Wars pops up on the screen and the trumpets just nail the first note of the Star Wars suite. And it just, I've been to Pops concerts where they've played it. I've heard recordings of it over the years. And I have to tell you, there's just nothing like that. And the way that he weaves with the woodwinds and everything as as kind of you fall to the planet and the Star Destroyers, there's something about it that just, flying overhead. They just have, it has this amazing kind of encapsulation of the massive scale of what we're watching. And I would make an argument that Star Wars would not have been nearly as successful if it weren't for John Williams. And I think anybody that has been attached to that film in any way would say exactly the same thing. All right, now let's see. Mr. K mentioned Schindler's List, which is very, very distinct in here because it's not at all kind of directed toward that kind of grandiose sense of happy, wonder kind of music. Schindler's List is very cultural. It's very, it's very subtle. It's very small. It's very much a kind of, it's something that's supposed to draw you into the drama of every single frame, and I think it does it with a tremendous mastery. And I know that he was nominated. I'm not sure if he won for Schindler's List, the Oscar that is, but I think it was just that is one of my favorites. It is so tremendously subtle and so tremendously good in terms of being able to capture the drama and the emotions of Schindler's List. Sonic Rose mentioned, and I think she mentioned it first, but I think there's a lot of other folks that mentioned it, is Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is not only one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think one of the best movies of all time. I think it is a benchmark movie for everything that came before it and everything that came after it was different because of Jurassic Park. One of the reasons it works so well is not just because of all of the extraordinary work that went into special effects and all of those kinds of things, computer-generated dinosaurs, so on and so forth, but also that John Williams had just an incredible sense of how the music should function inside of this movie, and I think he does it just unbelievably well. Jurassic Park, we all know he recaptures kind of this sense of this amazing project. In one melody, you only need about 5 notes, right? Maybe a little more than that. Maybe you only need about 8 notes of the Jurassic Park theme to go, yes, this is about something huge, and it's about something about with achievement and extraordinary scientific achievement and research and breakthroughs. And I think it so well encapsulates the theme of Jurassic Park, because as soon as you get through that, it kind of breaks into this place which is dark and scary and very much represents the underbelly of Jurassic Park, which is what makes it interesting to begin with. So for my money, Jurassic Park has got to be one of the best, if not the best. Drastic, coming through in the clutch, mentioned Jaws. This film might be the greatest film score of all time if it came down to expressing a singular emotion, because I agree with with just 2 notes, right? We all know what that means, right? There's a shark in the water. Everyone to this day knows it. You can hear it at sporting events. You hear it. If you heard it on the street, you would be thinking, who the hell is talking about a shark coming here right now, right? It just so perfectly kept those particular moments inside that movie. It did it so well. It just really raised the tension and made those scenes that would otherwise be very, very empty and almost Hitchcockian because they don't do anything. It's just kind of it's very the tension is very high. There's not a lot of movement, right? The music provides the movement. It provides a kind of tensioning that's even beyond the fact that you're watching people react to something that they think is there. And I think it really does such a tremendous job. And so I really thank you for mentioning that, Drastic. DTX 180 said Saving Private Ryan. Again, another one that I think expresses the the um, the flexibility and the adept nature of John Williams at really creating musical motifs that work to the fabric of a film, and he does it in expert fashion. And Saving Private Ryan is one of the best examples of that. I think it just does tremendous work, and I think we all know that Saving Private Ryan is a very emotional film, and many of us probably would be hard pressed to find a theme in our heads, just to sing it right off the top of our heads, the way that we would sing Jurassic Park, the way that we would sing something from Star Wars. But Saving Private Ryan is just a wonderful movie, and in part it is a wonderful movie because the scoring does a great job of really tying us in again to those characters, doing exactly what a good film score should do. Off the beaten path a little bit, I wanted to talk about Bobby LeChimp, who, which I still love that name, who talked about Dracula. And I have to say, I hadn't seen this film until probably about 2 years ago. I started watching, it was on like AMC one night, because that's the only place you can probably get it right now outside of Netflix. And I watched it, and I remember thinking, you know, because it had the tendency to look like it was almost going to be cheesy and maybe lost a little bit in time. But one of the things I think that makes it relevant now is the fact that the music is so good. And if you're going to score something like Dracula, you better damn well know what you're doing. And John Williams does a tremendous job in that film. And so I really thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Slade 3K, a new member of the community, talked about The Empire Strikes Back. That, as I've said, is, you could really look at almost all the Star Wars movies and really make a claim that John Williams' magnum opus is the work that he does in Star Wars, because there are so many of them and because he maintains such a consistent high level of film scoring throughout. But The Empire Strikes Back for me is probably the tops of where it gets in terms of the original Star Wars movies. Cloud City, the way, do yourselves a favor. Watch the Bespin Cloud City scenes from The Empire Strikes Back, and pay really close attention to the music in it. Just that part, right? Forget the Imperial March and all the great things that we all know and love, but just take that moment from The Empire Strikes Back, and I think you will find one of the best pieces and some of the best scoring that John Williams has ever done, and I really mean that. There's that moment in A New Hope where Luke Skywalker kind of stands up on the dunes and he looks out at the suns, and it's, you know, the wind is blowing and it's very dramatic, and everyone knows that. That's one of the best moments in film scoring or film history, to be honest. If I'm going to really go out on a limb, but Empire Strikes Back, the way that Bespin Cloud City works, I would argue, is just as cool. There's just so much going on there in terms of music and the way that it really enhances all that's going on at that moment, and just does an awesome job. I mean, that's one of my favorite moments in all of film history. So you guys should check that out if you don't know what I'm talking about. Go take a look. There's something going on in the French horns there that just is unbelievable. Like, the French horns always are used to really depict a lot of emotion in films. That's something that most composers would tell you, but the way he uses the French horns in the Cloud City sequence is just amazing. Mike KE352, welcome back. Great to see you back again. Talked about one of the best, and I think that's E.T. E.T. came out a few years after Star Wars, or at least it came out after A New Hope, and I think it came out before Empire Strikes Back. Actually, no, it came out before Return of the Jedi. But it was a E.T., love it or hate it, was one of those great moments in cinema where just a completely off the beaten path. Not even, you know, there's no franchising there. I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't and it didn't become a kind of giant franchise, but it wasn't, you know, it kind of, to me, speaks of the originality that movies had at a certain point that I think we're coming back to another era of originality in film now. But there was something there. You know, Steven Spielberg was taking a chance on a film that had a very strange kind of premise. Here's an alien, and the alien is going to be lovable. And, you know, it's going to be lovable in kind of strange ways where, you know, it like touches fingers and it doesn't speak, you know, language. And, you know, I mean, who knows, right? You guys have all seen E.T., you know what it's like, but I mean, wow. The score on E.T. is unbelievable. I will never forget this, but I remember the first time I ever went to Universal Studios, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was going on the E.T. ride at Universal Studios. And they did a great job with it. And one of the reasons why they did a great job with it is because the scoring on the ride was so well done compared to the scoring in the movie. And it really brings out that sense. I think a great score, and this is E.T. is the perfect example of this. A great score is something that when you hear it, it's almost instantly recognizable. This comes from this. This reminds me of this movie. This brings back the feelings and the emotions that I have when I watch this movie. That's what a good score should do, in my opinion, and E.T. has that in droves. And lastly, and there were many, many other contributions I could have talked about, but in order to keep this a video that's relatively, you know, within the time constraints I've set for myself, I can't talk about all of them. But the Beer Ninja mentioned, this might be contentious for us all, but the Beer Ninja mentioned Episode 1, you know, the Phantom Menace as one of the best film scores of all time. Wow. We all know what the thoughts surrounding those movies really are, right? And if you don't, I invite you to watch the Echo screen that talks about it, and I will leave it at that. But in any case, we all know what we think about those movies, but the scoring in Episode 1 might be, and I'm just going to throw this out there, might be the best work John Williams ever did in Star Wars. I'm just saying. I think it's there. I think it's at that level. I think it's absolutely at the level. It might be the best score he wrote for any of the Star Wars movies. And I used to have that score on CD. I bought it, and I had it in my car, and I just loved it. Everything about it was just great. It really did so many great things. It harkened back to the movies that we all know at that point knew and loved, right? So it encapsulated all those emotions, but it also had this kind of sense of this is just a continuation. This is just this has all of that in it, but it's also, you know, all these other great things as well, and you should really pay attention to the newness of it. And it did that in a very incredible way, and I really, really love that music. It is probably, as I said, if it's not Empire Strikes Back, it's Episode 1 for me. That's just as the way that it goes. And I guess the AFI knows something I don't about Return of the Jedi. But anyway, there it is. So that brings us to a point where I have to make my decision, right, about all the things that I want to talk about here. And I think, you know, if I'm going to be honest, I think you guys touched on almost everything I had in terms of my head. I went and looked it up. I tried to look it through a few more. There were some great contributions there that I thought were really cool. Memoirs of a Geisha, for example. Things that were kind of off the beaten path for John Williams. Really showing what a versatile composer he really is and was. So I think that's really, really cool. All right, now let's see here. So, my choice. Oh, this is tough, guys. But if I'm going to make a decision based on all that we've got here, the best John Williams score for my money is Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is just the perfect example of what a film score should do. And I think that's reflected so, first of all, I'll say this. Soundtracks, however you want to understand what a soundtrack is, right? Soundtracks have been a very popular form of music production for a very long time, right? when Hollywood realized they could do something called a soundtrack, where they could have a movie that had a bunch of tunes in it, they could release those tunes onto a CD or a tape or whatever, an album, and